Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. We'll just wait a couple of minutes as people trickle in. Okay, just because I know there's a lot to discuss for today, I'm going to go ahead. And so good morning and afternoon. Welcome to the third session in the three-part Lunch and Learn series. My name is Rhonda Boatin, Communications and Strategic Initiatives Lead at ISHPR. I co-lead the Health System Impact Program with Dr. Meg McMahon. And as I said, as mentioned, as people will know from the past few weeks, this series is a joint effort between the Health System Impact Training Platform and ISHPR. So I'm joining you from Toronto, the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people. Toronto is also now home to many diverse First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed by the Mississaugas of the Credit. Apologies for the noise in the back, and the Williams Treaty signed by the multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. We are grateful for the opportunity to work, teach, and love on this land. And as we are all joining from different locations across the country, you are invited to share your own land acknowledgements in the chat. So we began with a session on impact narratives, then a session on communicating impact with the media. Today, we'll be discussing how to build your narrative CV. And this represents a major shift in research in the research world, but one that aligns closely with expanding our understanding of impact and recognizing diverse forms of contribution. So we thank all of our invited guests, experts, and everyone who has attended. And just to note that the impact narrative session and building your narrative CV session that we have today are recorded and will be made available in the future by the HSITP. So today it's my pleasure to introduce two of our speakers for today, two of our experts. So Anik Bahier, who's a deputy director at CIHR, whose team has really been leading the implementation of the new tri-agency narrative CV, and Dr. Leslie Chan, professor at the University of Toronto, who has played a huge role in thinking about knowledge equity and research. And so I will hand it over to Nick to start us off.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm seeing this photo and realizing that it's way overdue to being updated. So and this must date back to at least 15 or 20 years ago. So thank you for having me today. Let's jump right into it because I do have a lot of information to share to you guys today. So next slide, please. I like this slide because it talks to, you know, what's the journey that we have taken to get us to where we are today. So we started the work on the design of the tri-agency CV a number of years ago. And it was triggered, in fact, by some feedback from the research community that we were getting around the concerns with the use of the common CV and the barriers to that template. And so there was many consultations that were done with the external research community. And through those consultations, some key areas of requirements were documented for this new CV form. So we have some of them here listed on this slide, including the need for the form to be inclusive, so barrier-free to different areas of research, emerging research disciplines, different types of participants coming from academia or outside of academia. Then there's fostering research excellence. Obviously, the tri-agencies having as a priority the alignment to DORA principles, which focuses, on less on the quantity of the outputs and more on the quality of the research, prioritizing, contributions, leaderships, and things like impacts. So that was another area where it was a priority. Maintaining a function that allows the agencies to continue to evaluate our programs or policies, so capturing the necessary data for that. Specifically coming back based on the feedback from the CCV, those that we consulted indicated that the new tool needed to be intuitive. So, having an easy flowing design, layout, navigation that's easy to use. The tool being adaptable, recognizing that, it needs to be flexible to accommodate different types of funding opportunities that researchers would be applying to, and each of those funding opportunities having their own objectives. And finally, ensuring that the tool can efficiently support the peer review of applications. So going to the next slide, so this is what we had heard. So why are we adopting the new this tri-agency CV? Okay. So first off, it's important to note that we are joining many other funders that have already headed into this direction, including the US NIH, as well as the UK Research and Innovation. This new narrative style CV will allow users the flexibility to contextualize their research contribution that best highlight their expertise and the impacts of their research. It really allows you to tell your story. This format will prioritize a written description of the applicant's research contribution, enabling the applicant. Oh, maybe just make sure that your line is muted, please. Thank you. So it will allow applicants to really highlight a wide range of different research outputs, and also allow you to describe your research trajectory in more details than what was feasible in the previous forms. So let's jump to the next slide and look at what does this new template look like. So the narrative CV consists of 3 different sections: a personal statement, most significant contributions and experience, as well as a section for supervisory and mentorship activities. So we'll get into the details of each of these sections, but before that, I wanted to point out a couple of things. So this CV is not meant to collect bioprofile type of information or person type information, such as what was collected in the CCV in the past. Examples are, diplomas or work experience. So you will see there's no structured collection of data, of that type of data anymore in the form. If necessary for the program, it would be collected separately. However, you know, if an individual that is completing the form identifies that information would be beneficial to their application, they can certainly include some of those details in each of the sections. When it comes to the format, the tri-agency CV should be no longer than 5 pages if written in English and 6 pages if written in French. And it should follow the formatting agencies that are published online for the template. There is no limit in the amount of information that can be included in each of the sections, as long as the total page limit is respected, so 5 pages in English, 6 pages in French. The information in your CV template must be self-contained, meaning that you should not be including links to external resources. Next slide. So let's get a bit into the details of each of the sections. So as I said, there was 3 sections. So the first section is your personal statement. In this personal statement section, as an applicant, you should describe why you are well suited for your proposed role in a research project for which you're seeking funding. Think about this section as the place where you could include some information such as relevant expertise, the impact of your research and its benefit on society and science, lived or living experience. In other words, like the personal knowledge gained through direct firsthand involvement in events that have shaped your perspective. As well as previous work that provide either context to the results of your research activities, which support your current application. Next slide. The second section is your most significant contributions and experience. So in this section, you should be describing up to 10 important contributions or experience that relate to your application. Remember that these should be descriptions and not just a list of contributions. So as an applicant, you should explain the impact, the significance, the usefulness, and your role in each of these contributions or experiences. Contribution does not have to be a single publications or a single report. It could include a collection of related outputs. Your contribution and your experience section should not, however, be limited to just publications. So for instance, you could include other things such as articles or other publications, such as communications, conference proceedings, government publications. You could also include some assessments and review activities, such as journal reviews, conference reviews, peer review activities. You could also include community service or involvement that leverage your expertise. So that could be like your membership on expertise or advisory committee, community sharing circles, or even engagement events. And finally, it could be contributions to policies, guidelines, laws, rights, standards, and practices. Next section. All right, so the final section is the supervisory and mentorship activities section. This is where you can describe how you have helped mentor or train future generations. This can include the development of a highly qualified personnel for careers within and outside academia. You may include in this area the creation of safe, equitable, inclusive research environment, practices, and norms, the development and the delivery of training workshops outside of research or course requirements, formal or informal mentorship for highly qualified personnel, as well as any like outreach or engagement activities that you would have been involved in. Next slide. So where should you start? So the the first stop should be looking at the funding opportunity for which you are applying to, as well as looking at the material for the guidance material for that funding opportunity for reviewers. This is really important because from the funding opportunity, you will gain a clear understanding of the objectives. And then from the peer review guides, you will develop an understanding of what will the reviewers be looking as they are reviewing your application. We also encourage you to review the instructions for the Tri-Agency CV, and you will find online a list of frequently asked questions that may help you also guide your preparation for the form. You have a link here to accessing the template. The template should be used as is, so you should not be changing the format. And we definitely encourage you to start as early as possible. Next slide. So some of the step-by-step, considerations as you're preparing that CV. So as I've mentioned, look at, relevant information on the funding opportunity. It could be very helpful as well to review examples from some of your colleagues that may have already created a tri-agency CV or another narrative CV for another organization, just to kind of give you a sense of what this could look like. Make sure that you're highlighting as you're starting to write your narrative CV, your strongest and most relevant contributions and experience, again, associated with the specific objectives of the funding opportunity for which you're applying and relevant to the research for which you're seeking funding. Identify, what has the most significance for your application, and make sure to provide, sufficient evidence to communicate that significance. In terms of the writing style, one of the suggestions is to write an introductory sentence for each of the 3 sections, something that will be, catchy to reviewers. What do you want that summarizes the content of that section, that will, really communicate what you want reviewers to remember from the review of that section of your CV. We strongly encourage you to, as I've mentioned in the previous slides, start working on your CV as early as possible. But as well, make sure that you're sharing your CV with colleagues to get their feedback and allow it enough time for revisions, editing, and polishing before you finalize and you submit. Next slide. So some principles or things to keep in mind as you're writing your narrative CV. So be selective. Quality is preferable over quantity, is what we've heard from the peer review community. Think broadly, use examples, and those examples can be beyond academia experience. Use evidence. So, this is an opportunity for you to tell your story, and make sure that, you're substantiating it throughout the CV with, communicating clearly the impact of your work. Describe your career path and its context. Again, here, it's important to recognize that there are traditional and non-traditional career paths, and that's perfectly fine. So whether you're a member of, an active research community, or, you're participating to a research application as an individual with lived experience, that's perfectly fine. And you can describe your career path, or what allows you to contribute positively to that application in your narrative CV. And finally, make sure that you're tailoring the content of your CV based on the key criterias, again, the objectives of the funding opportunity, as well as, the proposed research for which you're seeking funding. Next slide. So we recognize that this is a transition for the research community. And so the team at CIHR has been doing a lot of work to make sure that we were creating different tools to support the research community with this transition. So as you can see, there are a number of tools that have been created to support individuals that are preparing a narrative CV. There are some general resources, and then some more specific ones associated to how to complete a tri-agency CV. And then on top of that, we have a lot of information to support our reviewers who are, sometimes reviewing a narrative CV for the first time. So that information is very helpful for the peer review community, but as I've mentioned earlier, you may find it helpful as well to review and to gain an understanding of how reviewers will be reviewing your CV and gain an understanding of what they will be looking at, because you will be able to tailor your content based on what reviewers would be expecting. So I'm leaving you, thank you, Rhonda. I'm leaving you with some discussion questions. Happy to take a few questions, or at the end, we'll have some time reserved. So we're interested in hearing your feedback on the effectiveness of the template, both from an applicant and a reviewer perspective. And I'm also interested in hearing if the right supporting material and guidance is being provided, if there's anything else that we could be providing to support you in the completion of your narrative CV. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anik, for that wonderful presentation and overview of the new tri-agency narrative CV. I will put the discussion questions in the chat. And now we're going to hand it over to Dr. Leslie Chan. Just confirming that you'll be sharing your own slides, Dr. Chan. If not, just please let me know.
I did send it to you, but I can easily share it myself.
Thank you.
Let me make sure it works though.
We see it. That's great. We just need you to click on the button. Right. Exactly. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Well, good morning, everyone, or well, actually, good afternoon for some of you. Happy to be here. I want to preface what I have to say, in terms of narrative CV. I want to be very specific to say that these are my personal reflections about narrative CV. The Tri-Council's, the template that Anik described is fairly new to most of us, and I have been thinking a lot about what all this means, and reflecting on my own academic career and how I can make use of these type of narrative approaches, and also think about why we're doing this as well. I think we're not doing this just because the agencies are requiring, but I think there's a lot of good intellectual reasons for switching to narrative CV, and many of you are aware of the limitations of the conventional CV. I've been in academia for almost 40 years, and when I first started a graduate student in the 80s, we were just handed these templates to say fill it out every year. And I've been filling it out for 40 years, and there's an accumulation of pages, and now it's so long I can't remember how long it is. And so that process became very mechanical, is almost become a little bit meaningless. So the narrative CV is really a good time to really say, well, what have you actually accomplished? What is it meaning? What is meaningful to you in terms of your teaching and research? And what it is that you have made a difference in terms of your contributions to your area of work and to the communities that you care about. And so it is not simply something that you do to kind of, fill the requirement of the funding agencies. I find narrative CV to be extremely useful as a professional tool in terms of sort of stock taking and reflecting on your own personal journey. So I've been writing narratives about my own work, not necessarily sharing out, but happy to do so as well. But just want to preface by saying that this is still also fairly new to me in different aspects. And I have some well, hopefully interesting thing to say, but maybe slightly controversial as well. And we can have a fun discussion afterward in terms of what we should be thinking about in terms of narrative CV. I have my slide here, and it shows a tree. Many of you would recognize it as a banyan tree, and this one happened to be in a botanical garden in India. It's supposedly one of the oldest banyan trees. There's only one tree that's spread over many hectares. Is one tree that's spread through its air roots, and then the air root comes down to the ground and it grows into another trees. And the root itself also underground is invisible, but it spread in many directions. And this trees obviously have been living for centuries. And I thought about this image because we always asked to think about impact. And I said, well, what would be a good image of impact? If I were to, retire tomorrow, is that one image that would capture what I would hope to think of impact is a tree metaphor. That is, trees that have been growing and shading and providing different kind of use for the communities and so forth. So that's my image of impact for me. So I would ask you while I'm talking to think about an image that comes to your mind when you think about impact. What would be to capture symbolically or visually or lyrically what you think of impact? If there is a single image, I know, or images. Now, Rhonda, I'm hoping, Rhonda, you're listening, that you can set up a whiteboard through Zoom, and then you can cut and paste your image into that whiteboard. So at the end of the talk, maybe we'll have a tapestry of impact from all of you. Now, speaking of a tapestry, I'm looking mostly as a tapestry of little black boxes on my Zoom screen, which is reminiscent of the pandemic days, 3 years that I have taught online, and all I saw was these black boxes on the screen. And I'm thankful for some of you who have your screen on. So if you feel comfortable, and you can turn on your screen or even put a picture up of yourself, I would really be thankful for that, because I need to be able to see faces as I speak so that I know whether it is having any reactions or not. Thank you. Okay, so think about an image as I speak. You can copy and paste it into your computer, and when Rhonda has the whiteboard up, and you can just upload it or paste it into the whiteboard. I would be very curious. Or you can speak about it later when we're in the Q&A session. Okay, so you're all familiar with the conventional CV. I was going to do a poll and asking people, about how many of you have done a conventional CVs, but it's redundant because I think I would guess almost 100% would have done a conventional CV. But I wonder how many of you have actually tried your hand on narrative CV. Right? So if you use your reaction button on the Zoom thing, if you can just put up your hand, I just want to get a sort of rough show of hand, how many people have already been doing this narrative CV. Okay, there's quite a few of you already doing it. So we definitely could share some of your thought, and then you can sort of see if you can challenge some of my suggestions as well. Now, the conventional CV, as I said, most of you know, but it is really a package of a lot of assumptions, right? And I said, when I was in grad school and going through my motion, I never even really questioned these assumptions, right? There was this singular narrative of success, right? When you go to grad school, you get your PhD, you're going to try to find a job in the academic market. At least that's when that was my experience, right? And so what was really told to me over and over again is that, oh, the cream will rise to the top. If you're good at what you do, you will succeed and you will get a job in the field that you want, right? That was 30 years ago. It wasn't true then, and it's not necessarily true now, right? And so there is no singular story of success or merit, but unfortunately, we're often been told, and so we're assessed often in that singular framework. You know, what's your journal impact factors or your citation and all that, right? And those kind of metrics have been highly inequitable, as we well know, and it erases so many differences in ways and knowings and approaches and really different knowledge systems that are not included in that conversation. And so one of the reasons why these agencies, CIHR included, are moving to the narrative CV is that it is broadening the scope of what we would consider impact in different contexts from different epistemic viewpoint, right? So it's no longer a singular story of merit or success or excellence. The other interesting assumption in these conventional CV is that you just add to it year by year, right? So every year I just go back to my CV, add this year's whatever it is, and then every year you just add to your stock, if you will. And so there's a very linear narrative, right? When you get your degrees and when you get your appointments and when you get your publications, and it's all listed chronologically, as if your life is really unfolding in that singular direction, right? And it is really often about the past, right? That you really cannot put your future into your CV because your aspirations is not often included. So essentially, your CV is a record of your accumulation of different types of achievements, right? Things that you have done that are countable in publication, in grant money, in awards, recognitions, appointments, and so forth, right? And we all know a lot of things that we do are not countable, and therefore they're not in the conventional CV. And again, that's the reason why a narrative CV provide that kind of space for us to include all kinds of labors and works that we do in our respective work. The other thing about these CV is that they don't necessarily serve us. These CVs are there to serve the institutions and the different agencies so that they can easily take stock of who is doing what the most, and they can easily rank and sort them to decide who get what, who get the reward, who doesn't get the reward. And I think these pragmatic considerations are there because large institutions often have no choice but to have these kind of bureaucratic accounting devices so that they can make decisions quickly when it comes to having to have to go through a lot of information, right? So I became interested in looking at the history of the CV itself. And there are not many historians who actually look at the history of CV, but I found this German scholar who have done some interesting work. And he said a few things about CVs that I have already alluded to. But one of the things that he also said was that CV really doesn't allow the kind of self-reflections that we often do as researchers and people working in communities, right? And we have all kinds of encounters that we cannot include in a conventional CV because they're not useful in the conventional sense. So again, narrative CV allow us to think about what really matters for us, not simply professionally, but also as a person serving particular community. Oops. And as I mentioned earlier, some of the work that we do are not easily countable. They're, I would say, care work. They're maintenance work. There are connecting work. There are nonetheless extremely important work, but they are not easily countable. And so narrative CV allow us to capture these different important forms of labor that we contribute to both the research enterprise and to social well-being. If you have not read anything by this author, Han, he's actually a Korean who grew up in Germany and so wrote mostly in German, but a lot of his works have been translated into English. So if you have time this weekend, find one of his many books. You'll enjoy reading it very much. And quite by chance, a couple months ago, after I agreed to do this session, I ran across one of his collection of essays, and one of the essays talk about the crisis of narrative. That is how we have lost the narrative in our contemporary life, and because so much of it is filled by information instead. So our CV is filled with information, but it completely lacks the life and the meaning that is given to through narratives. And so he had some interesting things to say. Now, narrative, I share a few quotes. Narrative and information are really counteracting forces because information intensifies the experience of contingency, whereas narration reduces it by turning the accidental into necessity. Now, this is, I think, so resonating with me because, again, if we think about our professional life, a lot of times things we do are not necessarily planned. And our path zigzag, if I think about how I end up doing what I'm doing, there was never a real plan that I said I was set out to do. A lot of accident became things that you said, oh, let me try this out, or maybe I'll see where this takes me. And those accidents define a lot of what we do in our past, maybe even in the future. So again, the kind of singular narrative that we often see is losing these kind of authenticity. And so information lacks the solidarity of being. And this other German philosopher said, information's cosmology is not a cosmology of being, but of contingency. Now, you keep talking about contingency is because contingency is about things that we kind of do and then jump to the next thing, right? We live in a time of contingency. We go from Netflix episodes to another one. We jump from one readings to another. We jump from one meeting to the next. We're always jumping with that, in order to keep up with this accelerated pace of the academy. So he's really reminding us to take time to think about the moment, the being, and to think about why narrative give us the kind of directions that information doesn't give us. So information dissects time into mere sequence of present moments, whereas a narrative brings forth a temporal continuum that is a story. Now, that temporal continuum is not necessarily linear either. I think many of us grow up in different cosmologies that sees time not as linear, but is multidimensional, backward, forward, spiral, in ways that are not, like most Hollywood stories. And so, so a narrative CV gives us that opportunity to think about dimensions, not in a linear way, but in an interconnected continuum that may not be possible. It's certainly not possible in a conventional CV. I've learned a lot from a lot of indigenous scholars, knowledge holders. Wendy Phillips, in particular, was an elder on our campus, and before him, Kat Grieger. And he always reminded us indigenous knowledge through storytelling has been around for thousands of years, and that we learn grounded in the place where those story comes from. So that land connections, the connections to who we are, where we learn from, who we learn from, are things that anchor the university itself, but we don't generally acknowledge it until recent years, right? And so there is a lot to learn from these different ways of thinking about our past, present, and the future through connections with the relationships that we have around us and through relationship to the past and to the communities that we're a part of and want to be a part of. So these are the things that I would invite you to think about when you think about narrative CV. As I was saying, a lot of the thing that you can think about is how do you think of your work to tell as a story, as a coherent story that doesn't just pick out certain things, but that there's a connection between what you do. Find the connections between what excites you and what you're passionate about. And so the things that I learned from my indigenous elders is that they ask you to think about where you are situated, right? Where are you thinking from? Now, this is so important because after 30, 40 years in academia, I realized I never actually given myself the space to think about where I think from. Because I grew up in Hong Kong, I grew up exposed to Chinese culture and English education. And then I went into a university that is steeped in, the Euro tradition. And all those years I was in academia, I never questioned where I think from. I just take it for granted that I'm in a Western university, and that's the norms and the principles by which I'm going to follow. And if I want to succeed in the academy, I would have to think within that structure. But we understand we don't need to be really confined to confine our thinking to those. We can be proud of where we're thinking from and who we are thinking with, right? We owe our understanding to so many great teachers and to the land where we have benefited from. And so in your reflection on your narrative, I think if you were to ask yourself, where you're thinking from and who you're thinking with, you're already going a long way into your narrative CV. Who are your allies? And then to build on that. And rather than thinking about conventional way of thinking about success, what does success mean to you and to the people you care about? Right? I know some of you watch tennis, and Naomi Osaka is a person many people know. She was very successful, and then she go through some really tough time. And the other day she said her dad called her and say, "You're already successful when you're happy and your babies are happy, right? So why are you worried about not winning the next Grand Slam?" And so that is a good reminder is how we can think about success differently. And of course, we experience rejections a lot. And of course, a lot of time, things don't work out as we plan. How do we capture those lessons in ways that could then benefit us moving forward. Of course, none of these are also in the conventional CV. You don't write about your rejections in your CV, but I think you learn a lot from things that didn't work out. And then finally, what do you really care about? Now, I know when we apply to a grant, we have to kind of say, well, how does my CV fit into what the funders are looking for? But I also like to ask you to say, well, how could you convince the funder to care for what you care about? I think if you can tell the funders that, and then Nick may have a conversation with me about this. I think funder would like to hear what you have to say in terms of why they should care about what you care about. Otherwise, they would never be changing. And I know CIHR and the other funders always listening to the researchers and to build better system to support their research. So let them know why they should care about what you care about in your narrative as well. And I will stop here, and I'm hopefully didn't ramble too much, and I didn't give you. Well, let's have a conversation, and if that Rhonda can share the whiteboard, maybe we can also share your image if you have one and see what our tapestry looks like. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Leslie. Dr. Chan, thank you so much, and Nick as well. So this was fantastic, and I think it really lays a great foundation for the next part of our session, which is the Q&A. Please feel free to raise your hand if you have a question. Please feel free to ask a question in the chat. I think we've heard a lot of, we've started from why what it's going to look like, what are some of the tips, to thinking about the more like foundational philosophical ways of thinking through this, which was fantastic. We're going to bring up the whiteboard. Feel free for everyone who put something in the chat or has been saving it up to please share on the whiteboard that we're bringing up. In the meantime, please raise your hand or put any questions that you may have in the chat, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. I will also add the discussion questions that Anik had originally asked. I'll post them again in the chat. If anyone would like to answer those ones as well, you're welcome to.
I love all the pictures that were posted in the chat. Oh, here they come.
Jawad, please go ahead.
Thanks so much, Dr. Chan. Such a great presentation, and of course, the first presentation too was really good, laying down the foundation and introducing us to the narrative CV. So I think for both of the presenters, I had one question related to giving us some examples of reflecting impact, especially for people in non-traditional roles, let's say in nonprofits or in embedded research, where research itself is kind of constrained within the bounds of so many other actors that are there that are affecting it. One, and two, related to Dr. Chan, and this is for Dr. Chan. I mean, I think one word that came to me was authenticity throughout his presentation. And if you could share some or one of his reflections that he had talked about, that would be very good to see how he has done it and to learn from it. Thanks so much.
I'm sorry, Jawad, what was the word? I didn't hear. Sorry, did you mind repeating it?
Yeah, no problem. I thought of authenticity, and just reflecting that throughout your journey, and where you're coming from, where you're situated, how you got here, how do you think about success, what do you care about and why? I mean, that's very important, rather than we're always trying to fit ourselves into what the funder might want. So that was the word that came to me.
I see. I was invited to a wedding by one of my former students a couple of years ago. I didn't know she was Iranian descent, but we have a great Iranian wedding. And at the wedding, my student grandmother came up and gave me a great big hug and gave me a card. It was so sweet. I may actually, I have it next to my table to look at all the time, and just thank you for teaching my granddaughter. And she wrote a lot of really nice things about that kind of relationship that her granddaughter always talked about. And then it reminded me a lot of times these kind of relationships don't show up easily, right, in our daily practices, right, whether it's teaching or research. And so I treasure those kind of connections that come out sometimes very unexpectedly. The other example I can show you was I led this research network back in 2015, and we have 8 research teams within that network. And one of the group was based in Lebanon, and the researchers were mostly, well, it's a mix of physical scientists and social scientists. And we often have really interesting debate about the sciences, this natural scientists that we're too, you know, soft on so many ideas. There's really no concrete evidence and a lot of these kind of things. We talk about social impact, but we don't show it and so forth. And meanwhile, she said, well, I can do the water sampling. I can tell you the water is contaminated or not. And I can say, don't drink this water because of X, Y, Z. And we have direct impact right away, right? So I said, well, maybe these different ways of seeing what impact means. And then several years later, some of you might remember there was a huge explosion in Beirut, right downtown Beirut, this huge explosion due to neglect. And this explosion was devastating, killed a lot of people, but also environmentally destructive, burns for days. And my colleague, the scientist, and a group of other scientists mobilized to take control of trying dealing with that situation because the government was simply not doing their job. And she wrote in a Twitter post that a lot of what she learned through that research network, the debate we had, social science impact and physical science impact, really impressed on her that we can all work together in ways that are unexpected, because some of these things natural scientists sometimes don't think about, or social scientists don't understand. So she said that kind of network research that we had allow her to see what she can do in that situation, right? So I thought, wow, that is an amazing capture of impact, if you will. But it was not written about, or it was not documented specifically in anybody's CV, that kind of understanding. I hope that makes sense, Joelle.
Thanks so much. Two very good examples. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Joelle.
Ariane?
Hi, thank you. So very nice discussion. It's super important, I think, to bring up like the intersectionality, positionality, reflections as well. I have a more specific question about the narrative CV. I only did it once, so haven't improved my version yet. I was wondering for the contributions, most significant contributions, it seems that it's harder than for the personal statement to writing more like a paragraph format. And I'm wondering if it is okay to actually still have kind of like bullet points with maybe a publication or a specific initiative or so, and then have a bit of explanation on how that is valuable, how that's impactful. And it's still hard to think about like how to talk about the impact or the relevance of that instead of like just giving reference or numbers, you know. If you have any comments on that, please.
Maybe Nick, we can have you go first, and then
I can jump
Leslie, if you have
in.
any additional.
Thank you. I'll give my perspective, but I think it would be really interesting to hear Dr. Chan's perspective as well. So from a tri-agency perspective, the format that you use to convey that information doesn't necessarily matter as long as you're fitting within the page limit, and you're respecting the template. What is really important is the content, right? The narrative, your explanation of that impact. So I'll let Dr. Chan jump in here, maybe to contribute based on his experience.
Yeah, so that's the challenge, right? Because we're never given a lot of time or space, practice for narrative, right? So we when it comes to actually write them in text or descriptive language, we're coming short often. So we have to practice, right? Now, and the way to practice is don't necessarily have to think about your research. I always say to people doing it, what's your favorite food? Okay. Don't give me a list of your favorite food. Describe to me why they're your favorite food. What kind of memory does it bring? Why does it make you think of your grandmother? You know, and that's where I was referring to. Where do you think from? Where do you think with? Right? And so think about your research as food item and why you cherish them, and you will find lots of description for it, right? And I would say don't leave it as a list, right? Because that would be that means you're not doing enough reflection. Fair enough. So tell me what your favorite food is, Ariane.
Thank you. I'd say stroganoff, which is a food that gives me pleasure because it's very common back home, and it's, you know, usually eaten with like a combination of other like Brazilian dishes. And so it's not only about the food, but like the sensations, emotions that bring to me. Yeah.
Yeah, see, you're good with describing that, right?
I got you curious about maybe.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank
Very
you.
good insights. Yeah.
So before we take up any other questions, being mindful of time, our presenters have graciously agreed to stay in an additional 10 to 15 minutes based on people's questions. But I do want to just share this first. Where is my... We do ask to share your insights on the session. So here is, sorry, I need to switch slides. Okay, my panel is, okay. And swapping, okay, apologies. We do ask if you can take a couple of minutes just to fill out the evaluation. It does allow us to think about future sessions where we can improve. So thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I will also take this opportunity to thank both of our presenters for their wonderful insights. Thank you for everyone who joined us today for this fantastic session on building your narrative CV. It is very new. It's very new. It's a very different way of thinking. And so all the insights that were shared today are so valuable. And we hope that this will lend well to you building your own narrative CV, because it is coming, has started and will continue to become a major part of your research career and academic career. And also just sharing, if you can follow the Health System Impact Program, the Health System Impact Training Platform on LinkedIn, that would be great. So maybe Meg, I just want to know if Meg, did you have any other any comments, maybe anything to add before we could continue with the Q&A?
No, thanks so much, Rhonda. Maybe just to echo your thanks to Anik and Leslie and to all the presenters that came before, and in particular to Elena and Christine and the Health System Impact Training Platform for partnering with us to host this series. This is the first impact series that we've done, and we really look forward to your feedback on whether we should repeat it, whether we should expand it. You know, there's lots of things we could do, such as small huddles for sharing draft narrative CVs or impact narratives and so on and so forth. So please share your time with the survey that Rhonda shared, because we really do use those data to help plan for future sessions. So thanks, Rhonda. Back over to you.
Okay. So if there's any other questions, please feel free to raise your hand. Leslie and Anik, and as well as Sarah, are here to answer any additional questions you may have.
I'm glad so many people share a little image. So it's a nice little collage.
So just going through the chat, I'm seeing Danielle say this is a good opportunity for the HSITP to create spaces for fellows to get feedback on their narrative CVs. That could be something that we're hoping others will, fellows will take on. Just looking to see if there's any other questions. Okay. Yeah, the image is beautiful. And so thank you, Christine, for downloading that and sharing that in the chat.
I'm not sure if you can see all the
Rhonda.
faces, Rhonda, but Elizabeth has her hand up.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see that. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Hi, thank you both for these presentations. Really, really helpful, in this transition. And I know a number of us have started to draft them and have used them in some of the grant competitions. And I wonder, I guess my question is, many of us are early in our career. We are often contributing kind of a small piece of expertise and not necessarily like our main expertise, or we're not necessarily contributing on a grant that is directly related to our primary passions or the way that we would write a narrative for our overall kind of impact. And so how do you think about, or do you have any advice for how to approach the narrative CV on, when we're contributing as a co-I? It is, to kind of rethink about how our impact fits into the sort of the smaller piece of expertise that we're bringing to that grant, without spending, like it's an astronomical amount of work, or it has been, and perhaps it will be less as I do it, but kind of rethinking how I'm fitting into to this grant and how to present that in a way to get the reviewers excited and care about what I care about. But I really love that perspective, but that thinking about if we're kind of contributing to grants as opposed to leading them, how do we think about our narrative CVs in that way?
Maybe we can have Dr. Chan start first, and then Sarah, anything you'd like to add?
So as I said, I really applaud the agencies, funding agencies, about rethinking the CV format. But I would even push further to say, well, not only should they think about the format, but also what counts, right? As your question, Elizabeth, is about what counts. So traditional stuff that counts are like visible contributions and outputs, publications, grants, and so forth. But as you said, a lot of these invisible work are actually so important, I know as graduate student, I spend many hours putting teams together, running meetings, and all those kind of things, without which a lot of the bigger project would not have happened. But my name never showed up in some of those things, right? And so I think you need to capture what you do in the process, right? That because you did this building work, that these bigger projects could happen. And that's not bragging, that's just documenting your contribution, right? And so I think one of the things, the practical advice too, is oftentimes because they're not counted in formal CV. We don't keep record of it. So looking back, I say, I wish I have kept record of all these things that I have done over the years, right? So my suggestion to you is record narrative things that you've done, whether it's big, small, or you might not think it's important at the time. They may have consequences later too. So yeah, keep track.
Sarah, did you want to add anything?
No, I think Dr. Chan captured it really well. I think, being reflective, if you haven't already, to things that you've done in the past, really recording them and trying to, really bring out the impact that it's had will be really helpful when writing your CV now or in the future. So keep record of those. I think that's a great, great point.
Thank you. Elizabeth, did you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, thank you both for that. I mean, I think it's really helpful to think about how we document and what counts, what we care about. But I guess the other part of my question is when we are contributing to a research team, not as the PI, so the grant area may not be kind of directly aligned, but we are contributing something, how to rethink our impact, or not impact, but how to rethink our narrative CV for each of these opportunities.
So a lot of journals now, there are contribution credits, that are being used. So I cannot remember the acronym, but there are some being trialed where authorships, sometimes you would see multiple authors, but you don't know who does what. So now many journals ask for specification of contribution. So is it conceiving the research question? Is it analyzing the data? Is it doing the interpretive work? Like there's different roles that people play, right? And so if you have played the earlier role in making sure that happened, that's still, there are to contribute, is part of the contribution to that success of that project, right? So there are systems now in place that would allow you to formally actually record these in, let's say, in publication. But if not publication, as I said, I'm hoping that the granting agencies would expand their their repertoire of what counts, right?
Thanks.
Thank you so much. There is a question in a chat that from Mark asking, we've discussed a lot of the positives related to this change to narrative CVs, but I am wondering if you've considered or anticipate challenges with this new format. So maybe I could have Sarah go first, and then Leslie, Dr. Chan, if you have anything that you'd like to add.
Well, thank you for the question. I think with anything that's new, there's a learning curve. So as we've mentioned before, it's good to start early and to, maybe have a couple of different drafts of your CV, perhaps, lending it to other people's eyes to give feedback. And so, with anything that is new, I think a lot of people have fears of the unknown. So if you get to writing it as early as possible, I think a lot of your questions will be answered as you go through the process. So yeah, we have heard a lot of challenges with writing the narrative CV. What if I'm not a good writer, or what if English isn't my first language? But I think it's really important to really just give it a try, see how your first draft goes, and keep working on it. Have other people take a look at it. I've heard a lot of people, and as mentioned in the chat, perhaps it's good if we exchange CVs to get some tips and tricks from other people. We have a lot of resources that we've posted on our website, and you'll have access to those. And you know, if ever there's anything that you feel we could possibly add to, we'd be really happy to know if there's any other resources that we could help provide the research community.
I think I saw someone wrote in the chat that CIHR should provide some space for these kind of mentoring and practices. I think the practice is the key, as you said. This is new to so many people, and some people are actually fearful of writing these kind of things. So I think practice in a safe environment with your peers, critique each other or help each other with their narrative, I think would be a useful thing. I think the resources are useful, but they're still detached from the experience. I think having a group working together works wonder. It really does. And getting someone to come in and kind of facilitate, and I'll volunteer to do it if you guys have that session, and then you can start building or making a narrative CV in a safe space.
Thank you so much. We have time for one more question if anyone wants to put their hand up or ask a question in the chat. There is a lot of interest for a narrative CV group, so that's really exciting. And thank you so much, Dr. Chan, for your offer of potentially sitting in one of the sessions and having more discussions about that. I think a lot of people will appreciate that. If there's no other questions, again, I want to thank our speakers, our guests, and everyone who was in attendance. Please feel free to be in touch if you have any questions, and please answer the evaluation if you have any suggestions of future topics. It's really been a pleasure to have you all and to do these sessions. We are hoping that everyone took a lot from it and is able to apply a lot of this knowledge to their own work. All right. Well, take care, everyone.